Again, our country is in decline. We're a failing nation, and this is what they do. I'm an innocent man. We will prove that again. 7 years of proving it, and here we go again. Very unfair, but that's the way it is.
Hey folks, Dale Jackson here for Yellow Hammer. Now, Donald Trump has been indicted. It's a federal classified documents case, and I could try to explain it to you, but I'd have to understand it completely first, and we all know I don't think that's going to happen. So, we turn to the guy who understands legal matters better than anyone else, Jay Town, former U.S. Attorney, Northern District of Alabama, appointed by President Donald Trump, and he's going to help us break some of this down real quick. Jay, in stupid Dale Jackson terms, explain the case against the former president of the United States.
Well, Dale, it's pretty clear to me that since there was a grand jury that was going in DC, and then there's another one that was started in Florida, that's where you would naturally have any indictment arising out of any of the events at Mar-a-Lago. So not January 6th related. And my understanding is there were no witnesses today. We don't know if the grand jury indictment came out of Miami or if it came out of Washington, D.C. My hunch is it's Miami, and therefore we can assume this is all related to the documents that were marked classified found at Mar-a-Lago last August. I think that what we're going to see is a number of failure to return cases, and that those arise under the mishandling of classified materials statute and also the Espionage Act. And I think you might see an obstruction charge too. Now, that's the one I'm most, and I've always been reserved on that particular charge, and here's why. If there is any moving of documents to conceal them, even if it was one that he really wanted to hold on to, and he hid it in some place other than where the rest of the tranche of documents that were found, the 20 boxes, then that's obstruction of justice. You're trying to hide from the federal government a thing that they want. Now, as far as the Espionage Act charges, look, he could have had lawful authority to possess those documents, but then if they're related to national defense, when the government says give it back, you got to give it back. We have never, Dale, suggested that. I still think there's a lot of issues with the case. There's a lot of Fourth Amendment issues with the case arising from the National Archives and how this whole thing began. DOJ has, Jay Bratt, who was in the National Security Division, he has planted himself firmly as a witness for the defense because remember, he told Trump to put a better lock on it, which sounds more like permission to me than we need it back right now. So there's still a lot of defenses for the former president that he'll be able to, deploy. The thing that bothers me the most, though, honestly, and I really had hoped, and I've said on your show a number of times and other shows that I really hoped he wouldn't be indicted, regardless of whether or not he did it. He, met all the elements, prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Because one, he is a political rival of the current sitting president. This Department of Justice is a bunch of appointees by the current president's attorney general, and it looks the damage this does to the trust and confidence into our entire justice system, not just DOJ, not just the particular prosecutors, but the entire system of justice is almost irreparable for some.
I agree.
And the fact that he's a political rival too, it just has this appearance of banana republic stuff. And so I always thought Jack Smith would recommend at least one charge against Donald Trump to Merrick Garland, the attorney general. But it was always Attorney General Garland's place and duty to have the ability to decline all of those charges. And you can decline that. You can use that prosecutorial discretion, not because you, General Garland, don't think that he did it, but because of the impact and the equities that we have to weigh when we prosecute cases, will this damage the FBI further? Will it damage DOJ further? Will it divide the country further? Will this seem political? If all of those things are true, which I would suggest to you they are, then I think you decline this case and you move on. That's not what's happened here. We'll know more about the indictment when it's unsealed next week, and have me back, Dale, and we can discuss the actual charges themselves. Maybe there's a surprise in there. Maybe it's a speaking indictment where we learn more about the actual events that support the criminality that's charged. If it's just simple statutes, it's going to frustrate a lot of people, much like the Manhattan DA did, where there was no details of any substance whatsoever in a 34 count indictment. That itself, that too, has certainly crushed in some ways the trust and confidence that people have in the justice system as being way too political right now.
Agreed. Now, do you believe, and tell me if I'm wrong here, do you believe that bringing these charges itself is political? I mean, the thing you suggested there a second ago, Jay, and again, you have experience with this, is don't bring the cases because it will be viewed as so political. Plus, he's a former president. Plus, he's a current candidate. Plus, all these other things, and it will look political. Do you think it is political?
I do not. I don't think Jack Smith recommended charges because of his personal politics. I just don't. And I don't know him, but I know too many people that I trust that do. And to a man, he doesn't care what General Garland thinks or President Biden or former President Trump about his work. He's just going to do the work. And he always had the out of, well, General Garland could have used his discretion and declined to prosecute, and he didn't. So I'm going to go do my job now, and I'm going to prosecute the former president of the United States. Yeah, so I don't think it's political, but it sure looks political. People will think it's political. They're already saying on television that it is political. They have no idea. They haven't seen the indictment, but it sure, I get it though. I mean, I'm sympathetic to it. And look, I'm not supporting Donald Trump in the presidential primary for a lot of really good reasons in my mind. But I am firmly on Donald Trump's side when it comes to whether or not he should be prosecuted in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Miami, or in Fulton County, Georgia. He shouldn't. Because some of those are. Alvin Bragg in the Manhattan DA, that is a political prosecution, period. The Fulton County DA in Georgia, that is a political prosecution if she ever brings charges, period. I don't get that from Jack Smith. And so, but Merrick Garland had an off ramp here and he chose not to use it. They had off ramps other than a search warrant back in August that they chose not to use, and they didn't. Now, they don't like him. There's no doubt they don't like him.
That I think is a big part of this. I'm not as charitable as you are, and probably because you have the experience in this stuff. But to me, I look at this and I say, wow, this is a guy who has been under the gun of he's done something illegal, let's get him. He's done something illegal, let's get him. He's done something illegal, let's get him. And then it crossed over, as it was at the beginning. Now we've learned after the fact that all of this was farcical. And that goes, I think, all the way back to the Trump-Russia stuff, to the Ukraine stuff, to the stuff they tried to do after January 6th. All that stuff, they stretched the text in order to fit the case. And, in this particular case...
Two impeachments, too, right?
Right. Well, I'm talking about the January 6th, the impeachment for January 6th, and all that other nonsense that they were involved in and that they did. And I'll tell you, in the January 6th commission as well. So you have all this stuff happening to the guy. Not a good guy, a guy who plays fast and loose, a traditional BSer from New York who does all these things, a real estate guy from New York who's had political power, played fast and loose with the rules of probably on 1,000 different ways with construction and real estate and all these other things. I'm sure all those things, but that's not why they went after him. They've continued to go after him solely because A, he was the Republican candidate for president. B, he won the presidency. And C, it's just really good politics to crush this guy. I mean, it just
Yeah.
is over and over and over again. And the further you keep him in the spotlight, the better off it is for the entrenched power interest in the Democratic Party. And,
Sure.
you know, I hear a lot of like, oh, the Republicans want to get him too. No, they don't. This does not help Republicans at all. It either hardens his support in a primary and gets him through the primary to where he has not picked up a single vote since 2020. And if anything, he's lost more squishes, moderates, whatever you want to call these guys, independents. So they know he's going to be easier to beat. That is what I think the intention is. Talk me down off the ledge.
Well, you know, a lot of people feel that way, Dale. So you're not nuts. I don't even think you're on a ledge. And perhaps I just choose to believe that the justice system I served for 25 years wouldn't do such a thing. Now, that stands in the face of Crossfire Hurricane, of the Mueller investigation, of 2 impeachments, of and then the January 6th grand jury, which I still think is farcical. I give a speech and I'm responsible for what 1,000 people do afterwards. I find that ridiculous. As far as these documents go, you know, I need to see the indictment to really give you, Dale, the ability to say, okay, I can see why they indicted him. And if that's not in that indictment and we don't know more, then that's going to be very frustrating and very hard to defend this action by the Justice Department. So I
Especially
don't think,
especially when you look and you see Biden and Pence and Obama and Clinton and all these
sure,
guys with other documents. Now, granted, I know you referenced it earlier. The National Archives said we want it back, and there could be other matters in there as well. The obstruction. I think there's a conspiracy charge too. So there's all these different things that come into the factor here. But the starting point is a starting point you probably could use with all these other presidents and vice presidents and whatnot. And you could have gone in and said, okay, well, let's start poking through and combing through here. And if we want to go after and attack, we probably could. Is that wrong?
well, it's not wrong, but remember, and this is from me as a prosecutor, right? I get the politics of it, but I never wanted to lock Hillary Clinton up either. I thought that was bad for the country. Couldn't stand her. Everything about her sort of is repellent. But I didn't think that putting her in prison was going to be helpful to the republic. I'm glad she lost. I remember running down the hallway when she conceded at like 3:30 in the morning and woke my wife up to tell her. It was like Santa was here, right? And I mean, it was a great moment. I had no idea I was going to be the United States attorney. It hadn't even crossed my mind that Trump was going to appoint me to anything. I just thought it was so much better than the alternative, which was 4 years or 8 years of Hillary Clinton. Now, you fast forward though, and if you're going to stay consistent, I have to be consistent and say you shouldn't prosecute Trump either. And so that consistency though has to go all the way back to Hillary Clinton, Obama. I mean, look, you're right. A lot of high government officials have classified or documents marked classified in their possession after they leave office. They just do. We got to clean up that aspect of the classification of documents and how they're handled because it's poor, especially in Washington, D.C., not really outside of D.C. And so that's something that we could have undertaken in the last 20 years, but we didn't. And so here we are now with a guy that nobody likes, that people can't stand. The majority of people didn't vote for him, and he's finding himself under a federal indictment. Now, here's the other thing that I think people need to understand. When the federal government, when the FBI and the Department of Justice say, you got these materials at Mar-a-Lago, give them back. Here's a subpoena. Here's another subpoena. Give them back. National Archives has been asking for 1.5 years. Give them back. And the answer that the lawyers for Trump allowed Trump to give, right, was no. At any point before August, when Mar-a-Lago was searched by the FBI, if he had given everything back, we would not be here. We wouldn't be in this spectacle, this constitutional dilemma, this political dilemma. So in some ways, I have to at least say out loud, part of this is Donald Trump's fault. He's not the unluckiest son of a bitch on the planet. He brings some of this on himself, and that chaos is just the preoccupation of chaos that this man endures every day. A lot of it he brings upon himself is just too much for me anymore, to support him in a primary. I'm going to
I think
report.
a lot of people feel the same way. I think a lot
Yeah,
of people feel.
well, I mean, and it's okay if people don't. My mother's going to vote for Donald Trump. My wife, when I came home, told me that the witch hunt is on. I get why people feel that way. I've made my choice. They can vote for who they want. At the end, we're all going to vote Republican in November and see what happens. But I think people have to admit that this guy brings it upon himself, not because he's hateable, but because of the things he says, because of the things he does, because he won't listen to a soul out there who might know more about, I don't know, the law or the Department of Defense or how diplomacy works than a guy who builds buildings. And it just seems to me that that's a bad way to lead. Loved his policies, forever grateful to him for the opportunity he gave me. Don't want to see him prosecuted by anybody. But I think his day in the White House, at least if I had a choice, is not going to happen again.
So a couple of questions here before we let you go. When you ran down the hall and told your wife Trump had won, were you wearing footy pajamas?
Just the bottoms.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Secondly,
I had the top tied like a flight suit.
okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, well, when we talk about this and all this, you talk about how he could have avoided all of this, and this goes all the way back, I think, to Jeff Sessions. I think it goes all the way back to Jeff Sessions. Sessions told me, he said, "Look, I basically said, and this is not a quote, but this is the gist of it. I basically told him, stop worrying about this. I was here the entire time. You didn't do anything wrong. We all know you didn't do anything wrong. Let them punch themselves out, and at the end, they'll have nothing." And he just continued to throw gasoline on the fire and made it worse. And that started the cascade of garbage that went on from that point on. Secondly, the things he's facing right now, these 7 alleged counts. I know we haven't read them, and I know you haven't looked at everything, but he's going to get convicted of some of this. Okay, there might be some thrown out. You said Fourth Amendment issues and other matters and things like this, but this isn't like a 1-count indictment where they're just trying to make a point. They're throwing enough stuff at him to where, in a normal case, somebody might plead out, choose one thing, and say, "Fine, mercy of the court," whatever. That ain't going to happen here. He ain't going to do that. They're going to get him on something. Do you agree on that?
If a charge is brought to a jury, to a trial, yeah. In the federal case, in Manhattan, that's potted plant could win that case. So don't forget, this guy also chose not too long ago to not show up for his own sexual assault, rape civil trial.
One of many issues. But I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this particular document.
I know. I know. But what my point to that is, though, I don't know what his lawyers advised him to do, but my advice would be to tell the same story that he told on CNN the very night after he's found liable. I don't think he listens to lawyers. If a lawyer were to say, "Why don't you just plead to one obstruction charge, and pay a fine," because he's not going to prison, and Trump knows that. Trump knows that there's not a prison that can house the former president of the United States. So there's really nothing to lose in terms of freedom here for him. It's all money, and he's got plenty of money. He doesn't care. He won't listen to his lawyers. He doesn't listen to people. He listens to about an orbit of about a dozen people. He's related to half of them. And that's why he burns through lawyers like a Vegas slot machine woman burns through cigarettes.
Yeah, I'll add to what you said. He listens to 12 people. Half of them are related to him, and every single one of them is financially dependent upon him.
Sure.
And so I think that's a part of, like, you get what you want. It's a feedback loop, and that's his biggest problem. He needs a Dale Jackson advising him and a Jay Town on his legal team. I mean, that's really what he needs, and the willingness to listen. I mean, that's just a simple fact. But I don't think he has that. Um, like you said, you plead to one. I mean, look, and I think the DOJ would be ecstatic if he were to plead to anything. If he were to say, "Oh yeah, I'll do one count of obstruction. Yeah, fine, give me a fine." They love that because it's an admission of guilt, and they would say, "Okay, there you go. We got him on this." And I think that they'd be completely thrilled with that. But he's not going to do that because, like you just said, there is no risk to his freedom. There is no risk to his fortune, and there is just, in reality, there's no real risk here at all to him, except reputationally. And I don't know how much. I think he cares very much about that, but I don't know how much his reputation is hurt if he's convicted of 7 out of 7 charges, or how much it's helped if 0.
Well, I also, the Trump supporters that are diehard, there is a certain number of people that if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue would still support him. And frankly, that's pretty silly. We should all have more intellectual curiosity about who occupies the White House than just red hats. But at the same time, when I think of the lawyers that he has had around him, there's a reason why they are not top-notch lawyers. You don't see huge law firms supporting him, Jones Day and Kirkland and Ellis, and these firms.
I texted you last night because one of the guys was on Lawrence O'Donnell. He was one of Trump's former lawyers on this case, and he's on Lawrence O'Donnell talking about it.
Yep.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind.
They're not serious lawyers. They're not. I mean,
obviously.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, my last question was going to be, you said there's diehards and things like this. Does Congressman Mo Brooks, who, again, we both know, was loyal to Trump to the very end, as Donald Trump stabbed him in the back, took the knife out, stabbed him again, took the knife out, had someone patch it up, turned him around, and stabbed him in the stomach. All those things happen with Donald Trump and Mo Brooks. And Mo Brooks told me today, he said, if Donald Trump is indicted, he will win the primary. If he is convicted, he will lose. So this is a political question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But do you agree with that analysis?
I actually don't. I think that there is a terminable number of people. There's an event horizon of individuals who are willing to walk away from the former president because it is exhausting to defend him. It would be much easier to defend somebody who has the same policies but isn't preoccupied by, utter chaos 24 hours a day and saying crazy things on Truth Social and things like that, giving everybody a nickname like he's in 3rd grade. People are getting tired of that act. They really are. Chris Christie's actually, I think, going to help this race quite a bit in that tamping down of Donald Trump, because Christie will just throw haymakers. He's a Jersey guy. He knows he has to go right through Donald Trump if he wants to win. He can't be Trump light. He can't be Nikki Haley and saying, I love everything about Trump, but I'm different. That's not going to win. That's not going to work. That'll get you a cabinet position, perhaps, if Trump won, but you're not going to become president of the United States. And so Christie's going to, and I think going to help DeSantis quite a bit, because he's not just going to throw one punch. He's just going to keep throwing them. And DeSantis doesn't have to be the only one on stage doing it, while the other ones sort of froth over whether or not their 2 percentage points is going to get them to the next debate or not.
Oh, man.
My 2 cents.
I know we've said this a lot, numerous times, numerous Monday mornings when you're on my show, numerous times when we've been doing streams and videos for Yellowhammer. This is crazy, and we're probably not done with this. So next time he gets indicted, we'll do this again.
Yeah. That's coming probably in a month in Fulton County. Who knows?
Good Lord. J-Town, thank you very much. Very smart guy. Anyone who laid it all the way to the end of this video, 25 minutes, you've gotten a lot of information. So like, subscribe, do all the things you're supposed to do. We appreciate that. J-Town, former U.S. Attorney, Northern District of Alabama. I'm Dale Jackson. Talk to you soon.